Hello everyone, Willie Clark here. Welcome to another week of my YouTube show. Trump just fired the FBI director, so it's been a day. But I'm actually excited because I'm recording this during my normal work time. I'm running a bit ahead of schedule, on time, this week. Not that I'm normally running behind, but this is a nice little segue into something else. I'm taking next week off, so there's not going to be a video next week. I'm taking vacation, which can be tricky to do as a freelancer and is something I probably actually don't do enough, and I'm long overdue for one. So I've got a few things I'm finishing up this week as I transition into vacation mode. But anyways, this week we're going to do another Let's Talk About. And actually, I said I was going to take next week off, and I might not. I actually have a video idea that I might do this week and then run next week. So that might happen. But if I take next week off, you know why. Anyways, this week is going to be another Let's Talk About, and it's actually going to be Zelda II. Yep, the second one, the weird one, the ugly duckling, so to speak, of the Zelda franchise. And I talked about this a little bit a few weeks ago, that I went and beat Zelda 1 for the very first time. I'd played through quite a lot of it, but I'd never actually beaten it. And I went and hooked my NES up and had a whole shit ton of trouble getting that working again. But since I had it hooked up and I played Zelda 1 and enjoyed it, I was like, well, maybe it's time to give Zelda 2 a fair shot. And I'm kind of working my way through all of these Zelda games, to remind myself of the good times before Breath of the Wild. Back when I liked Zelda games. But my only memories of Zelda 2, I think it must have been on one of the GameCube discs. I played it for a few, probably minutes, and was like, wow, this is shitty, this is side-scrolling, there's jumping, what is this nonsense, and that was it. And I think that's probably a lot of the reason why Zelda 2 gets kind of a bad rap. But it's actually a really interesting game. I'm having fun with it, and let's get the bad stuff out of the way. It is hard. It's pretty hard. Or at least at first. I feel like the difficulty is kind of tapered off a little bit. But the interesting thing, one of the things I've been telling people about Breath of the Wild is Breath of the Wild reminds me, or I shouldn't say reminds me, Breath of the Wild to me really feels like what would happen is if no other Zelda games existed between Zelda 1 and Breath of the Wild. It really follows in a lot of what Zelda 1 did and kind of throws everything else that happened in between out of the way. Zelda 2, on the other hand, feels much more like an NES Zelda game than Zelda 1 does. It reminds me of, obviously of Mario with side-scrolling and platforming and stuff like that. But it reminds me a lot of, the Ninja Turtles NES game and those arcade side-scroller and, NES-era games where you had a limited amount of lives and you had to keep working at getting better to push through challenges, and that was, really all there is to it. Hey, Minna. And that's a lot of what Zelda 2 is like. You have 3 lives, and if you die, you annoyingly have to go all the way back to the starting palace, or if you get a game over. If you die, and you're in one of the palaces in this game, then you restart there, which is helpful. But it's interesting, the one mechanic that I actually think is really cool, and I'm kind of surprised that a lot of other games haven't picked this up, but maybe it's because people shat on Zelda 2 for so long, is platformers with this idea of experience. So you level up. You can level up your magic, your sword, and your health, and you get experience from defeating enemies. And, this is kind of interesting because you can almost do a South Park World of Warcraft thing if you want, where you can just keep fighting little enemies and take hours and level up and be, strong enough to take on some of these things. Which is a really interesting concept for platformers, and I'm kind of surprised that a lot of other games, really haven't seemed to have taken this approach to it. But it's really weird. All of the items essentially are delegated to helping Link travel someplace he couldn't travel in the map before, which means there really aren't any interesting items. However, you do get spells, and some pretty interesting spells. You get one which lets you shoot fire from your sword, which is pretty cool. Up there with, maybe when Link's hearts are full, he can already shoot beams, and now he can shoot fire. The other thing, which is just, maybe a perfect representation, I was telling Will, the guy I podcast with, about this, and he was like, wow, Zelda 2, like, way to be weird. Link can also turn into a fairy. Full on, one of his spells is he can turn into a fairy sprite and fly around, and he can actually fly through keyholes, which is pretty cool. I've used it at least once, if not twice, where I'm missing like the last key in a dungeon, and I just fly through the last door and go on to beat the boss. I haven't finished the game yet. I know in particular, I think there's one bird boss that's coming up that's supposed to be particularly super annoying. The one boss I'm on right now is kind of annoying too. Yeah, but I don't know, it's an interesting piece of Zelda history, and yeah, I think it has some cool ideas. A lot of stuff like Link's downward thrust, you know, famous in Smash Brothers, and his up thrust both come from this game. And yeah, so I'm definitely glad I gave it a shot after all of these years of just delegating it to that shitty Zelda game that no one really wants to talk about or play. So, you know, it is on the Virtual Console for different things. I actually just had the gold cart lying around when I bought my, you know, old NES a few years ago. So yeah, there's some thoughts on Zelda 2. Hopefully I'll be finishing it up over the next few weeks or so. It does take some time to get moving. I think it took me 2 weeks to get through the first dungeon and get to the second dungeon. Like 2 weeks of playing it every day. And then over last weekend, I got through dungeons 2, 3, and 4, and I'm at the boss of dungeon 5 right now. So it's definitely picked up a bit. I've heard that the ending stretch gets pretty rough, so we'll see. But you definitely, when I was reading up on people talking about it a lot, you know, one of the comments I saw people say was, it's challenging, but it feels good when you're actually able to get through something, and that's definitely in there. So if you haven't checked out Zelda 2 and you know you finished Breath of the Wild and you want some more Zelda fix, it's weird, it's different, it's not what a lot of people are going to expect from a Zelda game, but it has some cool ideas going for it. So Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link, not horseshit. But anyways, yeah, so those are some of my thoughts on Zelda 2. Link, comment, subscribe. After Zelda 2, I haven't decided. I really want to get to Ages and then Skyward Sword, but I might stop and do a route through Link to the Past along the way, because I've actually only played Link to the Past once. But yeah, comment what your thoughts are on Zelda 2, any other Zelda games you want me to try out, or if you still think I'm the worst for thinking Breath of the Wild sucks. I guess you can comment on that, you know, say that too. But anyways, have a good week, everybody. And I will either be back next week with an awesome food-related idea, or that might get bumped to 2 weeks with me taking some time off. But if not, have fun. I will see you guys later. Peace. What the fuck am I doing?